Hey everybody, Stinky here. I'm a rank 1 Warlock. I play at a high rating in Solo Shuffle and Blitz. This is a video guide about my UI and the add-ons that I use. This is a high rated Solo Shuffle lobby, 2600 rating on my alt. This video is split into two parts. The first part is the still image. I'm going to go through each element of the UI, explain where it comes from, what the add-on is, what it does, so you can go get it yourself, customize it the way you like. You can get the build import codes and the Weakauras from my website, smellystinky.com. You can get all the build information there, and I'll be also posting other guides and things there too. The second part of the video will be a full replay of all 6 games of this lobby, and I'll explain different decisions I made based on information I got from my UI. This is just my second video guide. My first one was a demonology Warlock PvP overview, gearing, talents, rotations. It seemed to get a really great reception. I got awesome feedback on it. Hopefully you like this format too, and you find it educational and helpful. If you do, like and subscribe. I really love getting all the feedback I can while I'm early in my content creation journey. Okay, before we begin, I do want to emphasize that UI and playstyle are very personal. They are very unique to each player, so what works for me may not work for you. And a lot of what I've done is not optimal for all situations, but does work for me and caters to my own strengths as a player, as well as my own weaknesses and limitations. I make a lot of trade-offs. I will try and highlight those later on in the video, but hopefully you still find something in here that's useful that you can incorporate into your own gameplay, and you can customize it and then make it really your own thing. One more point before we begin is, universally speaking, a good UI makes things as simple as possible. This is an incredibly complex video game. World of Warcraft has been around for 20 years. There are so many spells, so many buffs, so many debuffs. If you look at this screen, it's crazy. There's just so much going on. A new player would find this very overwhelming. So the goal of a good UI is to take the most pertinent information and make it as obvious as possible, as quickly as possible, so that you can react to it in real time. That makes the whole process of designing your own UI extremely rewarding because it involves understanding how you play as a player, and it involves understanding the game very deeply so that you can filter through and find just the most important information in a very complex game. So I hope you find that process as satisfying as I do. All right, let's start. First thing you need to do is go to curseforge.com and download the Curse application, or go to Wowup and try the Wowup application. I actually haven't tried Wowup, but I've heard good things about it. These are just tools that let you download add-ons and keep them updated. Very simple. All right, unit frames. Blizzard does provide decent unit frames. You can modify them, move them around. Personally, I use shadowed unit frames. It lets me control how large and how bright my different party frames and target frames and focus frames are. Lets me make certain cast bars larger so I can keep track of them better. Lets me de-emphasize some debuffs or buffs that are just not as pertinent. So on the bottom left, you see my player frames. It's really centrally located, so it's very obvious to me when I'm taking damage. Above and to the left, I see my party frames, and they are simplified so that I see just what I need to see from them, including their targets, so I can assist them if needed. My target frame is also very easy to see, centrally located. Probably shows too many buffs and debuffs, but sometimes that's important, especially in PvE. And above that is my focus frame. I use focus a lot in my gameplay. I use focus macros to focus fear, focus interrupt, focus curse of tongues. So I can cast things directly on my target, or I can cast things on my focus target without actually having to click them. Usually I'll be attacking one of the DPSers on the other team and have the healer on the enemy team as my focus target, so I can easily keep tunneling damage into the DPS and CC the healer, crowd control the healer. I also change my focus target all the time. Over here I've got my pet frame. It's a little smaller and to the left because it's not super critical, but I do need to keep track of my pet's health. Left of my party frames, I've got Ability Team Tracker, super important. This lets me see the cooldown on my teammates' main abilities. You can customize it to show more abilities, but I keep it very simple. I just want to see the main defensive cooldowns, especially of my healer, including their trinket and things like Nature's Swiftness, Tranquility, Iron Bark. Because in Shuffle, you generally want to save your biggest defensive cooldown, which is Unending Resolve. until after your healer is totally tapped and doesn't have any other options left. Okay, now for the most important add-on in Arena and Shuffle, Gladius. Gladius shows you everything you need to know about your opponents, whether they have Trinket up so they can get out of crowd control, whether they're casting something so you can interrupt it, and it shows diminishing returns on crowd control used on them. The way crowd control works in WoW is that every time you use crowd control on somebody repeatedly, it has a diminishing effect each time. So it does half duration, then a quarter duration. But those diminishing returns reset every now and then, and you want to know exactly when that is so that you can fear them for the full duration. The thing about Gladius, though, is that it's no longer updated officially, so this is a version by Bicmex. So thank you, Bicmex. The equivalent add-on for Battleground Blitz is called Battleground Enemies, BGE. You definitely want to get this for Blitz. It does basically what Gladius does, except in a Blitz setting. It's a must-have for Blitz. Next up is OmniBar. This shows when your opponent's kicks are on cooldown. This is incredibly important. Kicks include anything like Solar Beam, Spell Lock, Pummel, anything that can interrupt your casting. What you want to know is when those are on cooldown so that you are free to cast whatever you want. That is your major window of opportunity to get Tyrant out, stack some imps, fear your opponents. Super important to keep track of this. I keep it centrally located right on top of my character because it's the most important thing I need to know as a caster. Next up is Details, which is a damage meter. This keeps track of basically everything that happens in combat, and it is really, really helpful both during a game, so you can kind of see who is doing the most damage and who needs to be shut down, but it's also really useful to unpack after a game how things went, especially if you face somebody who's playing the same class as you, but they played it better. Then you can see, okay, did they have more uptime on a buff? Did they cast something more frequently? It really helps to learn from those who are more experienced at your class. Next, you need a nameplate add-on. I use Plater. Plater is a great, very powerful add-on, very flexible, very customizable. I put my Plater options up at smellystinky.com. You can check it out there, download it, customize it. Plater just makes your enemies very visible and makes their health very visible and makes their cast bars super important, really, really obvious. So you can see the druid in the lower left. He's casting Cyclone. I can see that. I know I need to react to it. Plater also lets you hide a bunch of spam buffs and debuffs. Really, really important. It also works well with big debuffs, another good add-on. Big debuffs just makes certain very important buffs super big and super obvious on nameplates and unit frames. So you can see, for example, that same druid in the lower left had bark skin up. They were not a good target to go after because they were taking less damage. Very obvious from big debuffs and from Plater. Next, you need to get Weakauras, which is the most powerful overall add-on in the game. It doesn't do anything by itself, but it is a platform that lets you import these visual, programmable, customizable Weakauras that are visual indicators of basically anything you want in the game. Super, super powerful. I use a ton of Weakauras. This big one here in the center, Luxthos. This is a cooldown manager that shows me all the most important cooldowns when they're up, both offensive and defensive, and it highlights when spells have certain enhancements, such as when you get instant cast Dreadstalkers, it'll be glowing, you know you can cast it freely. Blizzard just introduced its own version of a cooldown manager into the base UI. It's a little bit lightweight, it's not very customizable. I think you should still be using Weakauras. There are other options, like Afinar makes a very good Warlock one too, but I generally highly recommend using something like this because it takes your mind off of your rotation so you can focus more on your positioning and what your enemies are doing. Another Weakaura I use is an Imp Tracker. This keeps track of how many imps I have out, when they're expiring. This lets me know whether I can ramp up the aggression, because if I have a lot of imps, I know that I'm applying a ton of pressure, and I can play much more aggressively than I would if I had no imps and I needed to play more defensively. This here at the bottom is combat status. This is not so helpful in Shuffle or Arena, but super important in Blitz when you need to know exactly when you get out of combat so you can mount up and go. I'll point out other Weakauras that I use as well when they pop up during the game, but the last add-on I'll mention is TrufiGCD. Folks in the community asked me to install this. It's actually great. It shows exactly what I've been casting. So I've just casted Shadowbolt, Fear, Grimoire, Felguard, Trinket. This is mostly helpful for stream viewers and video viewers, but when I review my own gameplay, I do notice that it helps me understand exactly what's happening. But strictly speaking, you don't really need it for your own gameplay. Okay, let's review the Solo Shuffle lobby. The healers are amazing. It's got Sea-Doo, he's in the Arena World Championships. You got Danny Carey, another great Druid healer. And it's a caster lobby with a Devastation Evoker, a Balanced Druid, and on my team we've got a Destro Lock with my Demo Lock. Alright, now let's roll the tape. Remember, I was being cycloned by the Druid in the corner. I used my Spell Reflect, I reflected a Cyclone. Not a very long one, but it's still kind of a nice little thing you can do when you see their cast bars very clearly. This is a Weakaura alert, healer CC. This shows very clearly when my healer is under some sort of crowd control, so I know to play more defensively. So I port back, Health Stone to help the healer catch up, and reposition and look to help peel for my healer, who's probably going to get chain CC'd here. Which they are. You see these dings, I know that I need to be helping out peel my healer so that they can start getting HOTS rolling again. And if you look at the ability Team Tracker now, I can see that both my Warlock and the Druid healer have overlapped on their major defensive cooldowns. This is understandable because there was a CC chain on the healer, a lot of pressure on the Warlock. So we have to be careful at some point, but right now that also means that we've completely stopped the opponent's go and we can be on the offensive. So I reposition back to the middle, center of the map. I have total control of the game. So I can Mortal Coil the enemy healer, I can Focus Fear them. I didn't even have to target them, I just Focus Fear them with a macro. And they're sent super far away. They have to use a bunch of cooldowns to catch up. So I follow up with a Focus Fear again, a Focus Axe Toss to stun the healer. They've been CC'd for a long time, they're falling way behind. So we're back to being on more equal footing with the enemy team after that initial bad start. With my OmniBar, I now know that both kicks on the enemy team are on cooldown, so I can freely cast anything I want. Fears, Hand of Gul'dan. This lets me stack imps and get some more control over the game. So I'm also keeping an eye on debuffs on the plater. You can see Doom on 2 of the enemies. You want to, as a demo lock, keep Doom rolling on as many targets as you can. Usually that's not more than 2 targets at a time, but that can be pretty helpful, adds a lot to your damage. And here's a good opportunity. I see the enemy healer come in for a Cyclone. I interrupt it with Axe Toss. It's a focus cast. Then I follow up with Focus Fear. The Warlock on my team follows up with an Interrupt and then a Mortal Coil. So that's a ton of chain CC. That other healer is falling super far behind at this point. And take a look at this. I've stacked up a bazillion imps. 17 imps is crazy. Crazy, crazy. Actually just hit 20 imps. That's unhealable damage. I trinket offensively, especially because their kicks are on cooldown, so I can freely cast tunnel damage and we get the kill. In between games, you can take a look at details, kind of get a sense of who's doing a ton of pressure and who's under a lot of pressure. They were targeting the Destro Lock a lot, so they were playing very defensively, unable to do much damage. But we still managed to turn around and get the kill because we lined up a lot of CC all at once, and that's really the name of the game. This is a challenging start. I've been kicked right off the bat. Our healer got cycloned. But the positive thing, now we're free to cast. There aren't any more kicks, and the balanced Druid on my team has been just pumping damage. Look at the details. And that's the role of a demo lock. You absorb a lot of CC and interrupts, and that frees up your teammates so they can do their full PvE rotation, do a ton of damage. Here I'm keeping an eye on my OmniBar. I see that spell lock is available, so I bait it with a shadow spell, and I can cast Shadow Flame spells like Hand of Gul'dan and Demon Bolt, and I know I can't be interrupted right now. And this is a bit of a trick you can do against Affliction and Destro locks. This won't work on demo locks because their pet is very tanky, but you can kill Aff and Destro pets if the enemy healer isn't really paying attention to their health. They're quite squishy, and this sets the enemy lock back quite a lot. They have to go resummon it, otherwise they don't have spell lock, and they're taking more damage because they lose Soul Link. Here again I'm watching OmniBar. I really want to get my Tyrant out, but both kicks are up, so I have to port back and summon the Tyrant from out of line of sight. I'm multi-dotting with my Doom. I keep it on the enemy pet because there might be a chance to kill it later. Looks like that's going to happen soon.
I cannot use that item yet. I'm out of range.
And now the enemy lock has to port back and hard cast, a very long cast for a new Fell Hunter. So we definitely have an advantage now in terms of overall pressure. So the enemy Rested Druid has gone behind the corner to do a Tranquility, but I can interrupt it with my pet stun because my pet is in line of sight because it's attacking the lock. Here I've made a pretty classic error, which is I've advanced aggressively without relaying my port. So I'm under a lot of pressure, but I've relayed a new port. I should be okay. Once again, my OmniBar shows that both kicks are on cooldown, so I am free to cast, put out some pressure, and then I notice that the enemy pet is once again low, just from multi-dotting. And now, with 3 pets down, the enemy lock is again in a lot of trouble. They're taking 10% more damage without Soul Link and have no more spell locks. So we just train the lock down, make sure they can't get a new pet. I follow up with a Void Elf Teleport, Portal Coil, keep them CC'd. The enemy healer Shadow Melts, which drops my focus target. I quickly focus it again by right-clicking Gladius. So I focus Axe Toss, and we get the kill. So the Evokers on my team now. Evokers do a lot of damage like Balanced Druids. So my job is just to enable them, let them do a ton of damage. We can probably kill this Warlock eventually. So this is a good position. I'm in the middle. I fake casted, which means I pretended to cast something, I stopped casting, and then I got Precognition, which is a buff that gives me immunity to crowd control for 4 seconds. That's because they missed their kicks on me, the Solar Beam and Spell Lock. And you saw a Weakaura pop up because I really want to know when I have precog, because I can do a lot of things in that 4-second window, get a lot of momentum going on our side. That precog alone gave us a lot of free casting time. We have killed 1 pet. The enemy Warlock's under a lot of pressure. They haven't gotten any damage out on their end. And positioning wise, we have control of the center of the map. We've now killed 2 pets, so the enemy lock has to go and hard cast a new summon. We have a ton of pressure out. Feels like we really can't lose this game. And then that happens. The Evoker died. I didn't even see it happening. I don't know what happened still even on the replay. I think the Destro lock and the Balanced Druid just blew him up out of nowhere. That just happens sometimes. Even at the very highest levels of play, we saw it at the Arena World Championships recently, people were dying before they could ice block or before they could use cooldowns. It's a very fast meta sometimes. People blow up, and you just gotta roll with it. Shake it off, next game. So a little trick you can do as a Void Elf is you can Void Elf teleport out of a Root Beam, which is the Solar Beam plus Entangling Roots. Normally you're silenced and can't do anything else, but a teleport does work. I like this positioning. I'm in the center, the enemy team is clumped up, they're trying to get away. But with the pet, I can still CC the healer from around the corner and still apply a lot of pressure. I'm seeing my healer CC Weakauras go off repeatedly. There's a CC chain on my healer, so I want to make sure I'm in position to peel, AoE stun, pet stun, help reset things, get stabilized. We're now repositioning towards the other pillar, and so I take the gateway over.
I'm out of range.
And then the Destrolock basically one-shots the druid, kind of like what happened in the previous round. So I guess I will take that. Here are some Weakauras. They're called arena-friendly markers. They're just two little arrows over the heads of my teammates. Makes them a little easier to see, especially the healer. You want to make sure that the healer is not too far from you and you're in line of sight for heals. I mentioned earlier that I do some things that are not very optimal, but are just efficient for my own personal gameplay. There is an example of that here. So my minor defensive cooldown is a single button that casts Dark Pact, Nether Ward, and Soul Rip all at the same time. Really inefficient in the sense that I will usually be wasting some ability there, but it's one button and I just cannot handle that many keybinds, so it is what it is. Here I try to reflect the Chaos Bolt and it wasn't even targeting me, so I just wasted Dark Pact and Nether Ward at the same time. If this were the Arena World Championship, I am positive that Supatis or Venruki or somebody would call me out on that total waste of abilities, but it's something that works for me simply because I know that I can't handle that many defensive keybinds, so I keep it simple, and it still can work at high rating. So this is the sort of thing that you want to look for in your own gameplay. Places where you can ease your mental load so you can focus more on positioning, strategy, and just keeping track of what your opponents are doing. In a similar vein, I only cast spells on either my target or my focus target. This is definitely not the most optimal way to play. If you look at a lot of the top arena players, especially those in the AWC, they will use Arena 1, 2, and 3 targeting macros. So for example, they would have 4 different buttons for fear. They'd have fear their target, fear Arena 1, fear Arena 2, fear Arena 3. That just is too complicated for me. So I keep it simple. I only use focus targeting. It's a bit of a trade-off, but at the same time, it simplifies my gameplay. I think it makes me more aware of what's happening as a result. And it also works better in non-arena content. So things like Blitz and any PvE content, arena-based targeting would just be completely wasted keybinds in those settings. So it's a trade-off, but I think it's worth it. Because remember, your UI and your playstyle are very personal. This works for me, it may not work for you. If you're a better player than me, then please do keybind more things. Back to the game, we've just been applying a ton of pressure. If you look at the details damage meter, we're just way ahead on damage, and my pet has a mortal strike effect, so our damage is much more effective overall. A lot of pressure on the enemy healer to try and keep up.
I need to target something first. I require a target. I cannot use that item yet.
Heading into the final round of the lobby, I've covered most everything pertinent when it comes to the UI. What I want to emphasize is that my UI is very tailored around my playstyle, which is sit in the center of the room, be very cognizant of when there are kicks available, try to get precognition, and take as much advantage of those precog procs as possible. So that's why I keep my OmniBar in the center, I keep my Precog Weakaura in the center, and my CC is really centered around my target and my focus target, which will usually be the healer on the other side. So here, I'm situated right in the middle. I got precog right off the bat. This is a good start. Things are a little hairy here because the Warlock on the other side just popped Malevolence. You can see the big debuff on their nameplate and their plater. That means they're doing a ton of damage right now. So I get out of there, reset a bit. And this time I actually do successfully reflect the fear. So it does work sometimes. So at this stage of the game, we are just in the center trying to get a little bit more CC, a little bit more damage out than the other team. Spreading damage is fine. You're trying to just stack up imps at this point. So you just want to be handed damning. Doesn't even matter what you're hitting, because the spell itself doesn't do much damage, but the imps do. And you need to get those imps, and you can transfer their damage very quickly to any target. So I'm watching my Imp Tracker. I'm hovering around 10 imps. That's a really good place to be at this stage of the game. And we're simply applying a little more pressure at this stage of the game. A little bit more CC. And with the momentum on our side, we eventually close this one out. Alright, I hope you found this video helpful. I hope some of the add-ons and Weakauras are useful to you in your UI setup. It can be pretty complicated customizing everything to the way you want it. Feel free to reach out with any questions. I will be streaming on Twitch and YouTube. And please like and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Alright, peace.